So hi everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Dana Victor, 31 years old from Herzliya, working out of the Tel Aviv office for Logz.io. Today we're going to talk about FileBeat Autodiscover. We're going to explain a little bit what it is, what it does, and how it can benefit you guys if you use it. And questions will arrive at the end, I guess. All right, so I think we should kick it off. Gwen, can you see my screen just to confirm?
I cannot see it just yet. I can't see it just yet. Oh, here we go. There it is.
Okay.
Beautiful
cool.
First slide, Dan.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right. So as we already mentioned, we're going to talk today about what is Autodiscover for FileBeat and why do we need to use it. Yeah. So this is me. Already told you a little bit about myself. Yeah. So this is the agenda for the webinar. We're going to talk about FileBeat very briefly, just to explain what it is and what it does. And then we'll talk about the Autodiscover feature, which basically enhances FileBeat and gives us specific capabilities. We'll talk about the best scenarios for Autodiscover, and we'll do a live demonstration. I'll show you how to configure it. I'm doing this locally on my machine, so it might change a little bit, but the principles are the same. All right, so what is FileBeat? So FileBeat is a log shipper, belongs to the Beats family. These are lightweight agents that you install on hosts in order to ship different types of data into the ELK stack. FileBeat usually grabs log files and sends them to either Logstash or Elasticsearch, and from there to Kibana to visualize and to work on the data. Specifically, FileBeat, the feature of Autodiscover was added to FileBeat about a year ago, I guess, if I'm not mistaken. And this capability was, in a way, missing. In a wider context, when people are trying to generate logs and send them from a Kubernetes environment or Docker environment or basically a containerized environment, they usually opt for FluentD. That's the crowd favorite. But since Autodiscover was added to FileBeat, this is a great option to use, which will give you a lot of different capabilities, and we'll talk about them in a moment. But just to give you a brief idea of what is FileBeat and what it does. So it's to ship logs to an ELK stack. All right, so how does Autodiscover enhance FileBeat? So Autodiscover basically helps you when working in a containerized environment to basically monitor movement in that containerized environment and adapt settings on the fly. So let's assume that you have a cluster of 3 machines on Kubernetes. One of those machines is a WordPress container, one of them for just a WordPress website. One of them is a MySQL database. And the third one is another MySQL database. And let's say that you want to apply different configs per container. So without Autodiscover, what you'll have to do is create a YAML file per container and apply that config. Autodiscover gives you the ability to do everything through one YAML file, and basically FileBeat will detect for you if a certain phrase or match would, if a certain, criteria was matched. And if indeed that's the case, it will apply the relevant setting that you provided beforehand. So an example would be Again, going back to my cluster with WordPress and MySQL, let's say that for the WordPress logs, I would like to add some metadata, maybe some fields with some values for my Kibana. And let's say that for my MySQL database, there's sensitive information that's gathered from my website that's stored in MySQL, and I would like to have that information masked or hashed. So in order to do that, again, in the traditional FileBeat use case, you'd have to create two separate YAML files and configure each of them for that specific instance. Whereas with Autodiscover, you can do everything through one YAML and say, okay, if FileBeat determines that this is a WordPress container, then this is the config, please apply. And we'll see that when we get to the live demo, but basically that's how it works. You just specify a certain field with a value. If that criteria is met, then the config will be applied. But that's just to give it a little bit more context of why would you even want to use that. Yeah. All right. So best scenarios for Autodiscover. So again, containerized environment would be the easiest one to think about. You have different images with different containers running different microservices and application in a very large scale, and you don't want to mess around every day, with the YAML files, trying to make sure they're up to date, that they have the right criteria, that everything is working as it should. With Autodiscover, that becomes very easy to manage. So that would be a first best scenario, containerized environment, and scale. So in my recent example, we talked about a cluster of 3 containers. That's kind of easy to handle even in the manual method. But if we're talking about a real production scale of a company, when you have thousands of containers or even hundreds of thousands, managing those could be challenging. So when using Autodiscover, that alleviates a lot of pain. All right, so now we're at the fun part, how to configure. So Gwen, just confirm that you see my screen when I go into other desktops.
I do see your screen.
Okay, perfect, thank you. All right, so we're on the terminal. So in my example, I'm using Minikube, and I already have a WordPress website with a MySQL database installed on that cluster. So I'm just going to check the status of my Minikube, and we can see that it's already running. So the cluster is already alive. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into the Kubernetes dashboard. Takes a second to load. This is all running on my local machine, so keep that in mind. I'm going to change to all namespaces, and then I'm going to go back to overview. Give it a sec. Yeah. No. Oh, there we go. Apologies for the hiccup. Let's try to reinitiate the dashboard. You know what? Let's first show you the website. So it's a WordPress website. There we go. All right, so this is the website. It's taking forever. Oh, it loaded. Okay. So this is the WordPress website, something very basic, not very special, just used a WordPress template, but just wanted to show you that it is working and running off my cluster. Now we're going to go back to the terminal and we'll give the dashboard another try. Hopefully this time it will work. And if it doesn't, you'll just have to trust me on where to put the YAML. But let's give it a few more seconds. All right. Wait, maybe no. All right, so this screen is basically enough to explain. All I have to do next is click on daemon set and then click on this plus icon. And then I just paste the YAML file, which I'll show you in a second, which is really the interesting part. So again, Minikube, Kubernetes cluster, running WordPress and MySQL. The website is already up and running. And we're going to apply FileBeat Autodiscover. So this is the YAML of Autodiscover. Basically, it's a FileBeat YAML, but it has the Autodiscover properties. So as you can see here, this is where the Autodiscover part starts. So under type, you have Kubernetes. You can also use Docker here if that's relevant for you. So this is the provider that Autodiscover is looking for. So it's now knows that it's in the Kubernetes environment, and it has a condition. If the field called Kubernetes labels app equals WordPress, it will apply the following config. And just to highlight some things, I've added this field test WordPress equals true. I've added an environment variable, production. And then my next condition is if Kubernetes container name equals MySQL, then I apply a different config. In this instance, test equals MySQL true instead of WordPress true, but it's still in production. So those are just two examples. I can have 1,000 of these with multiple conditions. It's usually best to use the pod annotations in the condition. So you probably want to select something like namespace or a container name or variables that are actually coming from the containerized environment rather than the application running, because maybe the application will fail and then your logs will not be parsed or ingested correctly. So best practice, just a recommendation, choose pod annotations that are coming from, example, from Kubernetes or Docker to put as your conditions before you apply a specific config. And that's pretty much it. I mean, once you have this ready, you just put it in your Kubernetes cluster as a daemon set, and you're all good to go. One quick mention is the role-based access control. I just put it because it doesn't always work without it. Kubernetes is giving me a hard time, so I opted for just putting it in always. So this is this little segment. Yeah, that's just something I wanted to mention. And the field here that you see token, this is unique to Logz.io, so you won't have that one in your Autodiscover because this is basically the token that we in Logz.io use to differentiate different accounts. So that's how we know where to send your logs to. So this is my test account token. If anybody wants to spam my account, you're welcome. All right, so this is the account. This is the Logz.io platform. We're under the log analytics, log aggregation. These are logs fresh from today. And we're looking at the last 24 hours. And just to prove that indeed Autodiscover is working, I'll go into this field, which I showed you just now, called test. And I'll filter in, WordPress equals true. And once I apply that as a filter, you can see that here. If I open one of these logs, you can see that indeed test is WordPress equals true, and the type is WordPress. So that's one possibility. If I edit the filter and I change to MySQL equals true, and I hit save, and I open one of these are different. The type here is MySQL, so this is a different type of a log. And in my instance, again, I added very simple metadata. But in your use case, you can do more sophisticated things through the config, as I mentioned earlier, which is add metadata, remove metadata, regex, hash, mask, multi-line, which is a big one. So there are a lot of options that you can configure through the YAML, and these are all viable through Autodiscover. All right, so let's go back to the slide. All right, so we talked about how to configure Autodiscover, very simple. Key takeaways from this very short webinar. Again, this is just an enhancement. It's a feature within FileBeat that really helps when working in scale and in a containerized environment. So using Autodiscover to scales makes it easy to apply configuration on the fly, apply different logging formulas per application type. Mature logging helps organization respond to issues more quickly, reduce downtime, create auto remediations, and ultimately contribute back to the bottom line. So that's a few things I wanted to mention. And how does Logz.io fit in this story? So we at Logz.io provide the LK stack as a fully managed service as part of the observability platform that we offer. We fully support the Beats family, so whether it be Metric Beat, FileBeat, Heartbeat, AuditBeat, there are a few more, I can't remember all of them right now, but all of those are supported. Once your logs are in Logz.io, engineers can use Kibana-based solution to analyze the information and troubleshoot faster. And if you're using Kubernetes or Docker with Logz.io, Autodiscover can assist in your setup journey. So yeah, that's a valid use case. If you want to use Logz.io, using Autodiscover can really benefit you. Next steps, these are just links to our blog. If you want to sign up for a free trial, you're more than welcome. You have the Logz.io Academy, where you can see short videos explaining how to do some things in Kibana and in the Logz.io platform. You have the Logz.io docs, where you can read more and learn and educate yourself about ELK Stack, Grafana, or any of the other offerings that we have as a service. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now's the fun part, questions.
Great. Thank you so much. Very interesting stuff, Dan. So we've got a few questions that came in. We'll kick it off with, if I'm using FileBeat now, is it easy to start using Autodiscover?
Yeah, sure. So if you're already using FileBeat, all you have to do is basically edit your YAML and add the Autodiscover properties and determine, the conditions as we discussed earlier. So you just select the relevant condition for your specific container, apply the config beneath it, and you're all set pretty much. And then you just redeploy the YAML and you're all good.
Very cool. Sounds nice and easy. So for our next question, we have, how quickly can I expect my logs to enter Kibana after FileBeat Autodiscover sends them?
Okay, so that depends on your architecture and your stack, but I can tell you that usually if everything is working according to the plan, I want to say, it should take about 30 to 60 seconds, not more. If you're over 60 seconds, maybe something is not working as it should. Maybe your your Elasticsearch is working very hard, and it needs more resources. With Logz.io, we usually, our SLA is around, it's usually around 20 seconds until we see the information in searchable in Kibana, but up to 90 seconds, we declare that to be okay. And beyond that, that's a degradation of service. And then we'll involve the relevant team members and investigate and try to troubleshoot.
Great, thank you. Okay, next question. Can we use FileBeat as a container in the Docker Compose?
Yeah, sure. You can just put FileBeat as a container. Yeah, indeed. It doesn't have to be inside a specific image. It could be its own container, if I got the question right.
Okay, next question. Can we ingest offline log files through it with the use of echo command?
Sure. I mean, as long as your logs are coming into a file using FileBeat with Autodiscover, you don't have to send them to the endpoint immediately. You can ingest later down the road. So you can curl them. You can use HTTPS if you want to ship. Yeah, you can just store them in a file, and using Autodiscover, they'll be saved according to their configuration, and you can ingest later, sure.
Okay, next question. Will the beat service affect my network capacity? How frequently does the sync work?
So I'm not sure about the cadence of the keep alive for FileBeat. What I do know is that anytime a new log line or entry is created in the log file, FileBeat will automatically try to ship that information to the endpoint. And if you're experiencing latency or issues in your network, it does have a retry mechanism, and it does have a buffer. So it will continue try until it regains connectivity.
And for our last question, are there Logz.io customers using FileBeat Autodiscover now?
Yeah, sure. There are multiple customers that are using FileBeat Autodiscover. With Logz.io, it's more of a matter of choice. So we have various different shipping methods. You can ship using agents. You can ship from code with an appender. You can ship directly from your cloud provider, whether it be AWS or Azure or GCP. So there are a bunch of options, and whatever works for the customer is fine with us. We have about 50 supported methods. So each of those is viable.
Very interesting, Dan. Thank you so much for that presentation. If anyone has questions, feel free to email us, or we've got lots of email addies on our website. We'll give everybody back some time in their day, and thanks again, Dan.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Bye.